Chapter 1. Alien or Man? Before telling about further happenings connected with Anastasia, I should like to thank all the leaders of religious denominations, scholars and journalists, along with ordinary readers, who sent in letters, religious literature, and comments regarding the events recounted in my first book. Anastasia has been called many things. The press has referred to her as Mistress of the Taiga, a Siberian wizard girl, a fortune teller, a divine manifestation, the girl from outer space. And so, when one Moscow journalist asked me, "Do you now love Anastasia?" I replied to her, "I can't really tell what my feelings are." All at once, the rumors started flying around that I was incapable of grasping anything at all because of my immaturity in spiritual matters. But how can one love when it's not yet clear just who is there to be loved? After all, no one has yet been able to come up with a single definitive description of Anastasia. On the basis of her assertion, "I am man, a human being, I am a woman." Footnote: the word man with a capital M is used throughout the Ringing Cedars series to refer to a human being of any gender. I am man, I am human being, I am woman. I've been trying to come up with some sort of explanation for her extraordinary abilities. Initially, everything seemed to be falling into place. Who is Anastasia? A young woman born and living as a recluse in the remote Siberian taiga, brought up after the death of her parents by her grandfather and great-grandfather, who have also been living the life of a recluse. Can one consider the loyalty of wild animals to her something unusual? Even this is nothing out of the ordinary. Many animals in peasant farmyards get along peacefully with each other and treat their human masters with respect. A much more difficult task is determining the mechanism whereby she is able to see things at a distance and can know details of various events, even those that occurred thousands of years ago, and to be completely conversant with our contemporary way of life. How does this ray of hers work when it heals people far away, when it penetrates the depths of the past or peers into the future? Philosophy professor Kim Ivanovich Shilin, footnote, Doctor of Social Sciences, senior researcher at Moscow State University's Institute for Asian and African Studies, known for his interdisciplinary research in philosophy, ecology, sociology, cultural, and Asian studies aimed at a synthesis of Eastern and Western cultural principles. He has authored numerous articles and several books on ecosophy, the interpretation of cultural and social phenomena on the basis of a culture's relationship to and perception of nature. End footnote. Philosophy professor Kim Ivanovich Shilin, who is also a corresponding member of the International Academy of Informatization, MAI, has written a number of articles analyzing Anastasia's sayings. In one of them he wrote, "Anastasia's creative potential is a gift of God, a gift of nature, which is universal, not merely a personal gift to her. All of us collectively, and each one of us in particular, are connected with the cosmos. The meaning of escaping and approaching catastrophe lie in a harmonious synthesis of our cultural principles. The development of this type of harmoniously pure childhood culture results in a feminine culture type. This culture type has been expressed most fully and clearly in Buddhism, but also in our Anastasia. It may be formulated in the following identification chain. Anastasia equals Tara equals Buddha equals Maitreya, Maitreya. Footnote: Tara, a female Buddha, a deity capable of removing interferences and putting things in perfect order. Maitreya, literally the loving one, is described as the future Buddha, associated with friendliness, success, and prosperity. Anastasia is, in the fullest sense, man in the likeness of God. Whether this is true or not is not for me to decide. Only I can't understand why, then, she hasn't written down any of her teachings, like all the other enlightened people in the likeness of God, and instead has concentrated, all during her 2 decades of conscious awareness, on dachniks, people who spend their time at their dacha, or cottage in the country. Unlike most cottages in the West, a dacha is invariably accompanied by a garden where fruits and vegetables are grown to feed the family all year long. Nevertheless, in reading what various scholars have to say, I have been able to conclude that she is not some kind of crazy person, inasmuch as there are at least hypotheses in the scientific world about what she has talked about, and experiments are being conducted on certain aspects of her sayings. For example, to the question, Anastasia, by what means do you discern and depict all the different situations of thousands of years ago and even decipher the thoughts of the great thinkers of the past? She replied, the first thought, the first word, was the Creator's. His thoughts still live today, surrounding us, unseen, and filling universal space, reflected in material, living creations produced for the number one creation, man. Man is the child of the Creator, and like any parent, he could wish for his child no less than what he has himself. He has given him all, and even more, the freedom of choice. Man can create things and perfect the world by the power of his thinking. No thought produced by man disappears into oblivion. If it is a thought of radiant brightness, it will fill the space of light and rise on the side of the forces of light. A dark thought, however, will fall on the opposite side. And today any man may make use of any thought produced at any time, either by people or by the Creator. Then why doesn't everybody use them? Everybody does, but in varying degrees. To use them, one is obliged to think, and not everybody succeeds in doing this because of the vanity of daily life. So all you have to do is think, and the ability comes to you, and you can even discern the thoughts of the Creator. In order to discern the thoughts of the Creator, one must attain a purity of thought appropriate to him, as well as the pace of his thinking. To discern the thoughts of enlightened people, one must possess their purity of thought and the ability to think at the same rate. If a given man has insufficient purity of thought to communicate with the dimension of the forces of light, the dimension in which radiant thoughts dwell, then man will draw his thoughts from their dark counterparts and will end up suffering himself and causing others to suffer. I'm not sure whether this is directly or only indirectly explained by academician Natalie Akimov. Footnote, first introduced in Book 1, Chapter 7, Anastasia's Ray. Almost had to sneeze. Though it is not commonly known, the USSR maintained an extensive research program on psychic phenomenon. For details, please see the well-researched book Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Sheila Ostrander and Lynn Schroeder. Natalie Akimov headed one of the many groups of scientists charged by the KGB and the Soviet Defense Ministry to find a scientific explanation for paranormal phenomena and some people's extraordinary abilities in clairvoyance, telepathy, and telekinesis, with a view to their applications to intelligence and military purposes. Akimov's and other teams' experimental observations of these phenomena, in particular the direct control of human mind over physical objects, indicated that on a deeper level, consciousness and matter have essentially the same nature, and led to the study of torsion fields. Many traditional scientists, jealous of the generous funding his group was receiving, were quick to label Akimov as a pseudoscientist and a charlatan, and charge him with fraud and falsification of scientific research, even though they themselves still cannot explain such phenomena, let alone answer even the more basic questions such as what is matter, what is energy. End footnote. I'm not sure whether this is directly or indirectly explained by Anatoly Akimov, director of the International Institute of Theoretical and Applied Physics at the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, in his article in the magazine Wonders and Adventures, entitled Physics Recognizes a Supermind. He writes as follows: There have existed, and there exist now, two schools of thought, two models of perceiving nature. One model is associated with the Western scholarship, in other words, knowledge gained on the methodical basis prevalent in the West, evidence, experiments, etc. The other is the Eastern approach, wherein knowledge is received from an external source through esoteric means in a state of meditation. Esoteric knowledge is not something acquired, it is considered a gift to man. As it turns out, at some point this esoteric approach was lost and a different route was embarked upon, one extremely slow and complex. Following this route, it has taken us over 1,000 years to arrive at a level of knowledge which was common in the East 3 millennia ago. I have the intuitive feeling that those are right to say, I have the intuitive feeling that those are right who say that matter filling the whole universe on a field level is some kind of interrelated structure. Footnote, field level, the level of number of fields such as electromagnetic and gravitational fields filling the universe but not directly observable by the material senses. In his book, The Sum of Technologies, in a chapter entitled The Universe as a Supercomputer, Stanislav Lem proposed the existence of a gigantic computer-like universal brain. Imagine a computer the size of the observable universe with a radius of somewhere in the order of 15 billion kilometers, filled with the elements taking up a volume between 10 and 33 cubic centimeters each. And here this brain fills the whole universe. This brain which fills the whole universe is naturally endowed with powers which we are incapable of imagining or even fantasizing. But if you take into account that in reality this brain functions not according to any computer principle but on the basis of torsion fields, then it all becomes clear. The manifestations of absolute proposed by Schelling, or the Shinayat of ancient Vedic literature, these in essence constitute a computer, and there is nothing in the world apart from this computer. Everything else is some form or other of the absolute. I skipped a whole bunch of footnotes, including Stanislav Lem, torsion fields, Friedrich Wilhelm von Schelling, and Shinayat, which is the Buddhist concept of the void, or the space in which all exists. And I'm just going to leave it that way. I'm not going to read those footnotes. This is what academician Vlail Kaznachev, active member of the Russian Academy of Medical Science, wrote about the ray in his article Living Rays in a Living Field in Wonders and Adventures of 3rd of May, 1996. I also skipped other footnotes, such as Vlail Petrovich Kanachev and Living Rays in a Living Field. I skipped like 2 pages worth of footnotes, just so you know. Okay. This is what he wrote in his article, Living Rays in a Living Field. Vernadsky, footnote, a Russian scientist compared to Charles Darwin, not reading the rest of that footnote, was probably right in asking the question, how does the ideal, which is mental, translate the planet Earth into its new evolutionary phase? How? How does the ideal, which is mental, translate the planet Earth into its new evolutionary phase? If you say only through labor, only through explosions, or only through technogenic activity, such a primitive answer will not do. There is a factual evidence showing that man is capable of exerting a remote influence on many electronic equipment readings. He can throw the measuring device out of whack, and that from far away. Here in Novosibirsk, experiments are taking place on the telepathic communication with Norilsk, Dixon, Simferopol, and Tiumen. Bunch of footnotes. As well as an American center in Florida and the remote links between man and man, as well as between the measuring device and the operator register accurately and reliably. We are confronted with an unknown phenomenon, the interaction of living substances over huge distances. These articles unfortunately contain many unfamiliar terms along with references to works of other scholars. It would be quite a task just to read them all, let alone make sense of them. Still, I have found out that scientists are aware of man's capability to make contact at a distance. They are aware, too, of the universal data bank used by Anastasia. She calls it the dimension of the forces of light, home to all thoughts ever produced by mankind. Modern science also speaks about this phenomenon, which refers to it as a supercomputer. I then had to figure out how I, who had never practiced any literary art, having never been trained for it, managed to write a book which continues to excite so many people. When I was in the taiga, Anastasia told me, "I shall make you a writer. You will write a book, and many people will read it. It will have a beneficial influence on the readers." Now the book has been written, and one might suppose that it was due to her involvement. But then one would have to figure out how she influences other people's creative abilities. However, nobody has yet managed to figure this out. It might make things easier, of course, to pretend that I myself at least possessed a little talent and was simply setting forth the interesting information I had learned from her. Then it seems everything would fall into place. Everything would be explained. There would be no need to waste any further time on reading scientific or religious literature or badgering specialists with questions. And here Anastasia presented a new phenomenon for which neither I nor any of the people who have been helping me can find an explanation to date. You may remember me writing in Book 1 what she said 2 years earlier. Artists will paint pictures, poets will write verse, and they will make a movie about me. You all will see this and think of me. To my question, "What do you mean? Can she predict the future?" Anastasia's grandfather replied, "Vladimir, Anastasia does not predict the future. She visualizes it and turns it into reality." Words. Words come cheap. And to be honest, I didn't pay too much attention to these words, dismissing them as a mere metaphor, since I had absolutely no way of even imagining how accurately everything Anastasia said would turn out to be true in real life. But the incredible does happen. Anastasia's words are starting to come true in reality. First, there were a flood of poems. A few of these poems I published at the end of Book 1. Next, Anastasia clubs started springing up in various cities. The first of these was in the city of Galzendik, where they held an exhibit of paintings by the Moscow artist Alexandra Senko, all dedicated to Anastasia and nature. I visited the clubhouse and looked at the walls hung with large pictures. The surrounding space seemed to change in appearance before my gaze. From the many pictures, Anastasia looked out at me with her kindly eyes. And the scenes, I couldn't get over it. Some of the pictures showed scenes from the second book, which hadn't been published yet. And there was this glowing sphere, sometimes appearing right next to Anastasia. Later I learned that the artist painted not with a brush, but with her fingertips. Most of the pictures had already been sold, but left hanging for the duration of the exhibit, since more and more people were coming to see them. The artist presented one of them as a gift to me, depicting Anastasia's mother and father. I couldn't take my eyes off her mother's face. Offers started coming in from various film studios about making Anastasia a movie, and there was now something I was already accepting as a matter of course. I had touched the paintings and sheets of poetry with my hands. I listened to the songs and looked at the stills from a film which had already been made, and I tried to make some sense of what was going on. This chapter is very long. And now there is a Moscow research center devoted to investigating Anastasia's phenomenon, which has concluded the greatest spiritual teachers known to mankind for their religious teachings and philosophical and scientific investigations cannot match the fantastic pace of Anastasia's influence on the human potential. Their teachings have had a noticeable manifestation in real life only centuries and millennia after their first appearance. In some inexplicable way, over a matter of days and months, Anastasia has managed, without the aid of written doctrines or religious teachings, to directly influence people's feelings, provoking emotional outbursts and causing a surge of creativity manifest in artistic creations on the part of a whole lot of people who have been mentally touched by her. We are able to perceive them in the forms of works of art and inspired impulses toward goodness and light. How is it possible that this lonely recluse, all alone in the remote Siberian taiga, has at the same time managed to soar over our lives in real time and space? How does she bring artistic creations into being through other people's hands? They are about light, about goodness, about Russia, about nature, about love. She will cover the world with her great poetry of love. Poems and songs will shower the whole planet like a spring rain and wash away its accumulated filth, Anastasia's grandfather told me. But how does she do it? I asked. And the answer. She gives off inspiration and illumination by the energy of the impulse of her own aspirations, by the strength of her dreams. What kind of power is hidden in her dreams? The power of a man as a creator. But man should receive some sort of compensation for his creations. Honors, money, titles. And here she is giving them away and asking nothing in return. Why? I asked. She is self-sufficient. Her highest rewards are her own satisfaction and the sincere love of at least one person, replied Anastasia's father. But so far these answers are not something I've been able to make complete sense of. In attempting to grasp who Anastasia really is and my own relationship to her in particular, I have continued to seek out various opinions about her and read as much as I can in the ways of religious literature. In fact, I've read more over the past year and a half than in all my previous years of my life taken together. But what has come of it? I have managed to come not only to one indisputable conclusion, a number of learned books claiming to be historically accurate, religious, and sincere, are nothing but a pack of lies. This conclusion arose out of a situation connected with the historical figure of Grigory Rasputin. In Book 1, I cited the passage from Valentin Pikel's historical epic novel, At the Last Frontier. In Book 1, I cited a passage from Pukin's epic novel, At the Last Frontier. His narrative tells about a semi-literate peasant named Grigory Rasputin from the remote wilds of Siberia, where the Siberian cedar grows. In 1907, he came to St. Petersburg, then the capital of the Russian Empire. He not only endeared himself to the imperial family, impressing them with his predictions of the future, but ended up sleeping with a good many of the prominent women in the capital. When a group of officers tried to kill him, they were amazed to find that even after swallowing the cyanide poison slipped into his drink, he was still able to get up from the table and make his way outdoors, where Prince Yusupov fired shots at him point blank from his pistol. Even after being riddled with bullets, Rasputin would not die. His wounded body was thrown off a bridge into the water, then fished out and burnt. Fucking A. The mysterious and enigmatic Grigory Rasputin, who impressed everyone with his stamina, grew up amidst the cedars of the Siberian taiga. This is how a contemporary journalist describes his staying power. Shut the We already read this in book 1. At age 50, he would begin an orgy at noon and go on carousing until 4 in the morning. From his fornication and drunkenness, he would go directly to the church for morning prayers and stand praying until 8 before heading home for a cup of tea. Then, as if nothing happened, he would carry on receiving visitors until 2 in the afternoon. Next, he would collect a group of ladies and accompany them to the baths. From the baths, he would be off to a restaurant in the country where he would begin repeating the previous night's activities. No normal person could ever keep up a regime like that. As with many other people, such descriptions also shaped my impression of Rasputin as a hopeless debaucher. But fate threw my way a different concept, as though trying to induce me to reconsider. This is what the Pope of Rome, John Paul II, had to say about Rasputin. Today from the river comes unscathed the body, never found, of a holy monk, and his secret offspring will enter into the ark with prayer. What's going on here? On the one hand, he's referred to as a debaucher, and on the other, a holy monk. Where is the truth? Where is the lie? There's more. In the text of some of Rasputin's notes, written during a trip to the Holy Land, happened to fall into my hands. They were brought to Paris by a refugee from the USSR named Lobachevsky. This is what Rasputin himself wrote. The sea effortlessly comforts. When you awake in the morning and the waves speak, they dance and make glad. And the sunlight glistens on the sea, and it seems to rise ever so quietly. And at that moment, man's soul forgets all about mankind and fixes its gaze on the glow of the sun. And a happiness kindles in man, and he feels in his heart the book of life and the higher wisdom of life, indescribable beauty. The sea awakens him from the dream of earthly vanities, and many thoughts will arise all by themselves, quite effortlessly. The sea is a vast space, but the mind is even more spacious. There is no end to man's higher wisdom. No philosophy can possibly contain it. Another moment of stupendous beauty comes when the sun sets over the sea and its rays fill the western sky. Who can estimate the beauty of the sun's twilight rays? They warm and caress the soul and offer healing, comfort. The sun disappears behind the mountains minute by minute, and man's heart grieves a little as it's amazing The sun disappears behind the mountains minute by minute, and man's heart grieves a little at its amazing twilight rays. And then it grows dark. And oh, what silence falls! Not even the sound of a bird is heard. Lost in thought, man begins to pace the deck of the ship, involuntarily recalling his childhood and all of life's kerfuffle. That's a fun word. Kerfuffle. And begins to compare the silence around him with the bustle of the world, and quietly talks with himself, desiring company to stave off the tedium inflicted upon him by his enemies. So who were you, Siberiac? Siberiac, Russian word denoting a resident of Siberia. A Russian named Gregory Rasputin? Where is the truth written about you? And where the lie? How to make sense of it all? What can one rely upon in trying to fathom the essence of one's being, one's destiny? What great works can help one discern between truth and falsehood? Where is the spiritual and sincere, as opposed to a mere pretense of omniscience? Perhaps one should try probing one's own heart? I have never written poetry before, but I want to dedicate my very first poem to you, Gregory Rasputin. People read Anastasia and come up with sincere, original poetry. I have tried too. And this is the result for you. My apologies if the rhyme doesn't always work out. Dedicated to Gregory Rasputin. So you're semi-literate. Why, yes, semi-literate. From the cedar forests, well, those are my roots. And barefoot? Walking all the way from Siberia, you're bound to wear out more than one pair of boots. I am going to the Tsar, Tsar, to help our dear Batiushka, meaning father, an affectionate name used especially by Russian peasants in reference to the Tsar, Tsar. Oh my God. I'm going to the Tsar to help out our dear Batyushka. Hold on just a little bit longer out there. I am going to Russia, our dear Russia Matushka, to give her a taste of our pine forest air. What about it, hussars, you dashing rogues, freely debauching the ladies, making bold in a brawl? Just look at me, look, and see how one really debauches, you scum, thinking you know it all. Peter's city in fine Paris garb is assembling, but watch lest your corsets too tight squeeze your hearts. The Siberiac enters, and ladies are trembling at the sight of his peasant form, at the sight of this peasant from far eastern parts. But as he went off to the morning prayer service for others' redemption from error to pray, he heard his land calling. She spoke in a whisper, the only one telling him this: "Go away. The flesh-eating age of the beast is upon us. All drunken and growling, it leads men astray. While your fiery soul has been keeping it from us, it can no longer do so. You must go away. You can't hold the savagery back for much longer. Just a moment, that's all you will last. It's too strong. I am Russia. You cannot imagine my sorrow. I am now. You will never finish your song. Go back to your cedars. My rebounding is certain, and then you may ask whatsoever you will. Oh, how I'd love us to go to the banya, Russian baths or bathhouse, similar to a sauna. Oh, how I'd love us to go to the banya. I'd beat you with besoms of birch, even pine. My profligate Russia, for you I am longing. I shall stay with you, Russia, forever. You're mine. The age of dark madness with fury come howling. Grishka stumbled, his breast full of bullets that day, while the blackness stood mocking, its dark visage scowling, saying, "Crawl, you Siberiac. Go on, crawl away. You can hold me back only a half-second longer, and then from the depths of my pit you'll be shown a punishment frightful, more painful and stronger than the world in its history has ever known. A hero you are, but you'll be called a blasphemer. From the bottles of poison your image will peak, and the scions you saved will curse you as a schemer, and spit on your soul, you Siberian mazik." Crawl away, mazik, Russian word for peasant. Crawl away, it is I who now have all the power. Fly away if you like to your heaven on high. But a moment is left, see, not a day, not an hour, so give me my moment, you're still going to die. Bring on the Madeira, let's head for the banya, and there I shall show you what's real and what's crass. A Siberiac, you say? I'm a down-to-earth peasant. So what's all the babble and gab about, ass? His body was shot and drowned in the river, then burnt in a courtyard midst rubble and sand. Today, as spring winds blow their way over Russia, they carry his ashes across the whole land. Well, muzik, said the blackness, still standing there mocking, where on earth is your tombstone, and where are your eyes? You can never bring back now the days of your living, and your scions will see but an image despised. Show them the debt they owe. I give you power. Show them the bills for your service unpaid, or is it your wish to just weep and cower? Grishka spit a lead bullet. You Satan are foolish, as if I could care about either weeping or loans. Come now, my musics, how's the banya, dear fellows? Time for more boiling water to be poured on the stones? Gregory Rasputin, from the cedar forests of Siberia, stepped into the life of a pre-revolutionary Russia in an attempt to head off the storm of a revolution, and perished. Anastasia also lives amongst the cedars, and is also trying to do good for people, also trying to head off something before it happens. But what fate has our society prepared for her?